back to Rating the List, where we review, discuss, and reimagine popular movie lists objectively. We're your hosts. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Brad. And on this episode, we're going to be exploring number 65 from AFI's 100 Years, 100 Passions, the 100 Greatest Love Stories of All Time.
And number 65 is Bonnie and Clyde, released in 1967, directed by Arthur Penn, starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway.
The synopsis for this biopic is as follows. During the Great Depression in Texas, Clyde Barrow, played by Warren Beatty, meets Bonnie Parker, played by Faye Dunaway, while trying to steal her mother's car. Bonnie, bored with her life as a waitress, is intrigued by Clyde and becomes his partner in crime. They pull some small holdups that are amateurish and not very lucrative. The crime spree goes into high gear when they hook up with gas station attendant C.W. Moss. Shortly after, Clyde's older brother Buck and his wife Blanche also join them. The women do not get along. Blanche, a preacher's daughter, has nothing but disdain for Bonnie, Clyde, and C.W. Bonnie sees Blanche's flightiness as a constant danger to the gang's survival. Bonnie and Clyde begin robbing banks. Their exploits start becoming violent. During a botched escape, Clyde shoots a bank manager in the face. Later, police raid their hideout thinking the gang are bootleggers. 2 of the cops are killed during a shootout. The gang is now pursued by law enforcement, including Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, who they earlier humiliated. During a second raid, Buck is mortally wounded and Blanche injures her eye. Bonnie, Clyde, and C.W. barely escape alive. Blanche is sightless and in police custody, where Frank Hamer tricks her into revealing C.W. recuperating at the home of C.W.'s father, Ivan. Ivan, who believes the duo have corrupted his son, strike a bargain with Hamer. In exchange for leniency for C.W., he sets a trap for the 2 outlaws, pretending to be stranded on the side of the road. When Bonnie and Clyde stop to assist him, they are ambushed by police and killed.
So this is this our first biopic on the list?
Yes. We have watched at least 2 on the side list.
Okay, yeah.
So stuff that's come out subsequent to 2002 or somehow in the AFI's unflinching wisdom did not make their original list.
Yeah. So this is our first one. I thought it was good.
This is the first time I've watched it with the eye of paying attention to the love story between Bonnie and Clyde. I've seen this movie a number of times. It's a pretty famous movie, especially the final scene where, police just riddle them with bullets, which is a little Hollywood dramatization, but in reality, they really did put a number of bullets into both Bonnie and Clyde. It was frankly overkill. I've seen documentaries on what happened in real life. The movie follows things fairly closely. There isn't too much Hollywoodization to it. The one thing that they kind of get into in the movie but drift away from, because we're talking about late 60s and we're still dealing with the Hays Code a little bit at that time, is they really don't get too far into Clyde's impotence.
I think they handled it. They dance around it a little bit.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is they really dance around it.
He doesn't tell.
And then they have the scene where, they use it as a plot device to have them consummate the relationship, which I'm not sure ever happened.
Wow.
So one of the famous things about, Clyde Barrow, aside from him being a huge outlaw, was this thing about his impotence. But at the same time, he loved Bonnie. Mm-hmm. They had a love affair. It's a sexless love affair for the most part. In the movie, there is one sex scene that happens towards the very, very end.
Yeah.
Which that's really, to me, that's the most Hollywood thing that happens in the movie. It's she kind of shows him that, he is somebody, blah, 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 and that's, what apparently, sends blood to his junk, and, that's what
whatever works.
Whatever works.
Yeah, I did appreciate that they did not romanticize the criminal aspect of it. Like, they were really, like...
The only time they did, I think, was for kind of historical accuracy, was that guy in the bank that he says, "Is that your money or is that the bank's? That's my money. Well, then take it."
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of like they were trying to make it out like, hey, we're not robbing.
They were kind of like a Robin Hood kind of situation.
Well, it wasn't a Robin Hood situation. I mean, they were stealing the money for themselves.
Yes.
But what they weren't doing is they weren't poor people stealing from other poor people.
Right.
They were like, we're going to steal from this is white collar crime. We're going to be stealing from banks for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, before that, they were robbing like grocery stores and stuff
right.
like that, which, frankly, they were stealing $5 from that dude in those kinds of situations. But I think that's fairly accurate to how they were kind of viewed at the time. During the Great Depression, there was a whole lot of mistrust of the government and institutions, and everyone was hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Unemployment was something like 25% or something like that nationwide. Bread lines, food shortages, people just couldn't put food on the table.
Yeah.
And they were doing whatever they could to do that. So the fact that someone was stealing from a bank who were repossessing homes and things like that. Like there was the scene where, they're holed up at that one guy's house.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just, they're shooting the they give him a gun to shoot the sign that, says
yes.
it belongs to the bank. That kind of stuff was, I think there's probably some self-serving stuff there too. It's like, kind of the the court of public opinion is maybe they're not such bad guys. They go through that homeless encampment after the
yes.
second raid, when they're both shot and CW asks the people for water and just kind of goes through it, and nothing really happens in the scene, but you get the sense that if law enforcement came right through, they wouldn't give them up. That was the kind of vibe that I got. Like, if 10 minutes later, after they left, cops came through and say, "Hey, have you seen anyone?" I think everyone in that, they would have probably been like, "No."
I think, like, maybe Bonnie and Clyde were, like, one of the original celebrities. Even though they were doing bad things and they were celebritized a little bit.
Yeah. I would say the original one is like the original celebrity criminal is probably Billy the Kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, you're definitely right. Is they kind of had that, and I think it kind of came up in conversation when we were talking. I forget why it came up. I think it was on like some YouTube listicle or something, or I can't even remember. It was Natural Born Killers, and I think Natural Born Killers has a lot of Bonnie and Clyde energy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like they really kind of thought, okay, how do we make a Bonnie and Clyde for a modern, at the time, early 90s audience, and how do we kind of, use the TV culture at the time, which is it's part and parcel now. Reality TV is like such a huge part. News, entertainment was really just starting to take off at that point. Prior to that, you actually got information on the news for the most part, regardless of what channel you were watching. It was mostly just, here's the news and a few local interest stories.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, news broadcasts were not thought of to drive revenue at any station, so it was, we can just put this out and give you the facts that you need to decide
mm-hmm.
on how you're going to vote, that kind of thing. That kind of started changing around that time, where stuff started getting sensationalized. The news department became a driver of revenue at networks when, other sources of revenue were kind of declining. So Natural Born Killers really preyed into that. But I also think they really looked at Bonnie and Clyde and how there was public perception about them, and probably Billy the Kid as well, and kind of, created a new age kind of celebrity
mm-hmm.
criminal.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that I'm thinking about that newly released movie Nope, and it's a horror movie, but it really deals with our relationship, human beings' relationship with spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, celebrities are basically the spectacles that we're obsessed with.
They're the new circus in some ways.
Yes, and the media, you know, has tapped into our sense of spectacle and knows that we're there for the
It's
what are they called at the stadium?
What stadium?
Russell Crowe played.
Oh, Gladiators.
Gladiators. I mean, obviously.
What stadium? Baseball, football. Give me
Sorry.
some more. Pull me in.
Sounds like
Yeah. 2 words.
2 syllables.
What was I gonna say?
Sorry, I
totally
took us off course.
I had a train of thought, and it's gone now. I think what I was going to say. Oh, I was going to go back to. It's basically the Don Henley song "Dirty Money" or "Dirty Laundry."
Yes.
So
yes.
it really I mean, that whole song is literally about this that scenario that you're talking about. How, you know, people are bored by actual news, and they want to see entertainment.
I mean, if you think about it, like back then when Bonnie and Clyde were doing their stuff, it was newspapers.
Yep.
Right? That's the only new media they had, right? So there would be these landish articles about Bonnie and Clyde, and that was the spectacle of the time, right?
Yeah, and you could really embellish stuff in a news article especially back then. It's like, how would it, who is going to fact check it?
Yeah.
Who's going to fact check anything about, these police raids and that kind of thing? And
so it's like, who knows, like, how much of their story is true?
Well, I mean,
there's accounts,
right? There's a lot of historical accounts. There are many books that have been written on this. So I think, when you have something like that that's been studied to that degree, you can kind of pull together the most realistic picture that you can. Regardless, in any historical context, I mean, you weren't there, right? So you're always going to be looking at this from the rearview mirror. So you can only go by the accounts at the time. You can go by I'm sure CW was interviewed ad nauseum after this, right? So a lot of what probably...
Well, how do we know he didn't romanticize it?
I'm sure he probably did. But, you've got...
he was, like, in love with both of them.
Right. You've got that. You've got people who witnessed all of these. There's going to be at least one survivor from every bank that they robbed, right? So you've got those first-hand accounts. You've got factual information. You know who they killed. All of that stuff. So, there are enough, first-hand account, factual documents to something like this that you can put together a fairly accurate representation of what actually happened. I don't know what source material they got for the movie, but like I said, I've seen enough documentaries that they're fairly accurate in portraying both what happened and how quickly it happened too. This all happened in a relatively short amount of time. I think they were only the Barrow gang was only together for like 7 or 8 months or something like that.
Oh, that's not a long time.
Wasn't very long at all.
Yeah, my thing too is, like, I don't know how much Bonnie really was in love with Clyde or in love with the lifestyle. Because she was so bored being a waitress, being at home, nothing to do. And here comes this guy who's like, hey, I'm all about, like, doing risky things and having adventures.
I think anyone has met a young person, whether it's a young girl or a young man, who they get drawn into something because life is starting to get a little monotonous, and you're at that point where, like, oh, I'm an adult now, and adulthood kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at where she lived, it was very desolate.
And she sees this opportunity. This guy, he's in fancy clothes.
He's flashy.
He's charming.
Yep.
And, you know, he's flirting with her even while she catches him, you know, basically in her front yard trying to steal her mom's car. He just basically talks himself around it, invites her out. They end up driving the car around. So, you know, he kind of steals it anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, they just start having all this banter, and he recognizes in her kind of a kindred spirit in a way. Like, he sees there's a spark in her eye when he's talking about doing these dangerous things. And, you know, especially when you're young, dangerous things can be kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And people get drawn into that. And, you know, everyone's known someone in their life who is generally a reasonable person who's done something really freaking stupid.
Yes.
You know, but, you know, there's kind of rationale behind it in a way. I mean, she just happened to go way too far with it. It was like, okay, I'm a criminal now. I just decided that, like, on the spot that we're going to go do this.
Yeah.
I don't think it really hit her home that, you know, it was something you couldn't come back from until he shot that guy in the face.
Yeah.
Then it was like, okay, we are really in this. People know who I am. People know who he is. They didn't know who CW. They just knew his name was CW.
She still wanted to go home, even after that.
And even after that, she still wanted to go home. She still thought there was a way for her to do that, not understanding that, you know, she has been a party to murder at this point. So
yeah. Gene Hackman plays his brother. He was really good.
Gene Hackman's really good. We see in a dramatic role, we see the first on-screen performance by Gene Wilder. He plays a part of a couple that comes across the gang, and they're kind of forced to spend basically an evening out with them in the car, which is both, at times it's humorous, at times it's pretty, you know, you can see it's pretty intense, and you can tell they go from being scared to kind of being, you know, taken in by the action and the danger, and then again just being absolutely terrified at the end of it and left on the road. It's just there's a whole host of things that happen. It's kind of a microcosm for the entire movie. Their whole journey as a gang. It's a pretty interesting scene.
Well, and then Blanche, the Gene Hackman's wife,
right? She
won the Best Supporting Actress. I found her very annoying. I kind of got where Bonnie was coming from, because
Bonnie's thinking about it pragmatically, and it's just this woman is all emotion, and she is loud, and she's not thinking clearly,
and
she is going to
through the whole thing,
and she's going to get us killed. And in a way,
she does.
She kind of does. She gets her husband killed.
Yes,
pretty much.
Yes, and she's screaming through the whole movie. Because she's so frightened of this situation that she's in.
And to be fair, she didn't sign up for this. She just kind of, she is assuming that her and her husband are there to visit the brother, and then they kind of get drawn into it.
Yeah, she could have left at any time.
But she's married. It was a time when that's not something that you did.
Yeah.
So, it's a good movie. I
found the Tommy guns really annoying. The sound. It was really loud.
Well, that's because they were.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I would not have been a good Bonnie. I would not have been a good criminal back then. I would have been like,
as opposed to now.
As opposed to been a fantastic criminal. Right, I would have been a fantastic criminal.
She would have been like the gang in Heat.
The gang in Heat.
You know, and they're moving with military precision when they're doing their bank robbery. I could see it. It's a good movie. As far as love stories go, it's okay.
Yeah. I kind of understand why they put it on the list, though, because it's different.
I understand why they put it on the list, because there is genuinely a love story behind it, and a lot of what happens is because it's a love story. I gave it a 70. Jerry gave it a 58. The list gave it a 64.
All right.
All right,
great. So if you enjoyed this video, please comment and like. If you have questions for us, please feel free to ask them in the comments, or if you'd like to email us, please email us at ratingthelist@gmail.com. For now, that's it.
Yep.
I'm Jerry.
And I'm Brad.
And we're Rating the List. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.